Hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hi, my name's Zoe. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I really do hope that you decide to subscribe, and if you're a current subscriber, please make sure that your bell is on, as YouTube doesn't like suggesting the kind of content I like to make. So today's video is another true crime video, and if I do say so myself, I am getting so much more on top of these true crime videos. And if you don't know my current schedule, I am currently posting one true crime video throughout the week and a story time video on a Saturday as well, so you can get to know me a little bit better. Today we are going to be talking about the Austin yogurt shop murders. This case has been unsolved for around 30 years, and one thing I do have to say, it is a little frustrating, and the timeline we will talk about a little later can be a little bit confusing. So what I will do, I will leave links down below to information, so after this video, if you do want to take a deeper dive yourself, you can go and have a look. And without any further rambling, let's jump into today's case. Today's video takes place in Austin, a large city in Texas, USA. Austin always felt like a home from home city. It was a place that you could raise your family. It felt quiet and safe, and there was no violent crime. But that was all going to change in 1991. During the evening, the 6th of December 1991, a local police officer was doing his usual rounds at around midnight when he spotted a potential fire coming from a yogurt shop called I Can't Believe It's Yogurt. He called dispatch to inform them, and they sent out fire crews to the location. Of course, the police officer was correct and there was a fire, but nothing would prepare fire crews for what they would find inside. Crews found the bodies of 4 teenagers. 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers. Due to the condition of the bodies, it was clear that this was a homicide. And one detective later spoke out about how he felt and the image that he had in his mind, and he had said the image never left him. Now let's talk a little bit more about these 4 victims. Jennifer and Sarah Harbison were of course sisters, both born to their parents Mark and Barbara Harbison. Jennifer was born in 1974 and Sarah born in 1976. For the beginning of their lives, they lived in Texarkana, USA, but in 1979 their parents sadly split up, so the girls and their mother moved to Austin, Texas. This was a new start for both their mother and father. Barbara went on to remarry, and so did Mike. Mike still lived a couple of hours away, but he was still an active part of the girls' lives. Jennifer and Sarah both attended a private middle school, but they were eager to move on to public high school to be like everybody else and live a normal teenager lifestyle. Jennifer, being the oldest, was the first to join Lanier High School. She was a student speaker and was really interested in sports. A classmate that knew Jennifer described her as opinionated. She wasn't afraid to say how she felt and always told the corniest of jokes. She was a hard worker, and all the teachers spoke really highly of her. When Jennifer was in her senior year, that's when her younger sister Sarah joined Lanier High School. Sarah was really smart and athletic. She was described as a student and an overachiever. Despite being in her first year, teachers had later said how she made a massive impact on the school. She was a leader and she was really enthusiastic. Jennifer was so passionate about her education and career. She knew that she needed money to help her get through college, so she decided to get a job and earn her own money. Her father also bought her a car to help her to get to and from work. The only deal is that Jennifer was to keep her job and make the repayments on the car. Her first job was at the Albertson grocery store. Then she started to work at the I Can't Believe It's yogurt store when her friend Eliza recommended it to her. Eliza Thomas was born on the 16th of May 1974. She also grew up in Austin, Texas. In 1981, when she was 7 years old, her parents also separated and got a divorce. Eliza and her younger sister would actively see both parents and would split their time between the two. Eliza also attended Linear High School. This is how she met Jennifer and became close friends with her. They had a lot in common and they bonded really well. Eliza loved animals and was inspired to be a vet when she was older. She also did well at welding and was top in her small engine repair class. She was very intelligent when it came to mechanics. She was also employed at the I Can't Believe It's yogurt store and soon after was able to buy her first car. Jennifer and Eliza loved working at the yogurt shop. They were responsible, trustworthy teenagers, so they were left on shift a lot and were left to close up the store. They also enjoyed that they could have a little bit of a gossip and a little chat whilst working as well. Now, what teenager wouldn't love gossiping with friends? Amy Ayers was born on the 31st of January 1978. She was the youngest child. She had an older brother. She was a massive country music fan. She loved animals and grew up on a ranch and became used to the farming life. She was your average teenager that spent her spare time riding horses. During school, she quickly became friends with Jennifer, Eliza and Sarah. She was younger than the other three girls, but that really didn't stop her. They all had very similar traits and they all really gelled well together. Amy was still in middle school, but she was planning on going to Linear High School where the other girls attended. Amy was especially close to Sarah. Now, they didn't spend a lot of time together because they were at separate schools, but they really made up for this on the weekends. They would have sleepovers, go shopping and go to parties together. So it's like they were never missing out on having time together. Now we know more about the background of the victims that were in the fire on the 6th of December. Let's talk about what exactly happened on that day. As I said from earlier, a police officer was patrolling Austin. He had noticed smoke coming from the I Can't Believe It's yogurt shop and called dispatch at 11:47 p.m. Fire crews arrived within a couple of minutes and they initially believed that it could be some sort of small kitchen fire. Firefighters couldn't see inside because of the thick black smoke, but they started to tackle the fire with water and this enabled them to get further and further inside and eventually the visibility got better. The fire did start to diminish quite quickly and that's when the bodies of the young girls were spotted towards the back of the store. Once the bodies were found, the fire was immediately labelled as suspicious and higher authorities came out to investigate. The bodies had been found by the back door. 3 of them were stacked and there was another body laying a couple of feet away. It was clear that the bodies had been set alight and that is what caused the fire. The bodies were severely burnt and were not recognisable, but police did say that they believed they belonged to young women. The bodies were severely burnt and not recognisable, but police did say that they thought they belonged to young girls. It was determined that the victims were forced to undress, they were gagged and bound with their own clothing, and then they were shot execution style before being set ablaze. Sergeant John Jones was the first detective to arrive on scene, as he was the only homicide detective that had been on duty. At the time of being called to the fire, he was being filmed by a local news station for a documentary. He was unable to answer any of their questions due to the severity of the case. It was a case that would stay with him forever. In the next coming days, the investigations were rolling, but unfortunately the victims were identified as sisters Jennifer and Sarah Harbison and their friends Eliza Thomas and Amy Ayers. Jennifer and Eliza's car was in the parking lot, which led to their identification, but after some deeper digging, police were able to identify the 2 other girls. The 4 girls started their day like any other on the 6th of December. They only had a week left at school, so they were getting excited for winter break. They were making plans. They were excited to be free from school. That afternoon, Jennifer finished school and went to her boyfriend's apartment. Sammy Buchanan was her high school boyfriend. Sammy had not attended school that day because he had been to a funeral, so they wanted to chill together before Jennifer went to work. At around 7 PM she went home to get her work clothes and to also pick Sarah and Amy up. Sarah and Amy were going to the mall, which was on the same street as the yogurt shop, so Jennifer didn't mind driving them. They were planning to spend most of their evening at the mall and then go to Sarah's for a sleepover. Jennifer was planning to bring them both home when she had finished work. Eliza and Jennifer were both working the evening shift at the yogurt shop. Eliza started at 7 PM and Jennifer started at 8 PM. They were both responsible for closing the shop that evening. As usual, the shop was busy and customers were in and out, and this later played in police's favour because this meant they had a lot of witnesses. Between 8:15 and 8:30 PM, a lady recalled two young teenage boys sitting in a booth at the front of the yogurt shop. They made her feel uneasy. She wasn't too sure why. Maybe it was just something about their demeanour, but police did later release descriptions of these young boys. They had long, unkept hair and appeared to be of a Hispanic origin, but she couldn't be certain of their race. At 9 PM, Jennifer took her break and drove down the road to pick up her sister, Sarah and Amy, and she had brought them back to the yogurt shop. Later in the evening, Sarah and Amy walked to the local pizza shop and brought their food back to the yogurt shop. Just after 9:30 PM, Eliza's mother called into the yogurt shop to buy some yogurt and check up on the young girls. This was something she did often on their evening shifts. Everything seemed fine, nobody was in the shop at the time, and it was like any other normal shift. Eliza's mum left happy and under the impression that everything was okay. Between 9:30 and 10 PM, a local security man nipped into the yogurt shop to check everything was above board. He recalls two separate couples sat in the shop eating dessert. There was also a young man who seemed very out of place and was on his own. He was very jumpy, especially when placing his order for one single can of soda. And then he made his way to the bathroom at the back of the store. The security guard did speak to police about this young man, but unfortunately they've never been to locate or identify this person. The last sale was made to a young couple at around 10:42 PM. They recalled a couple of men still sat in the shop at the table closest to the cash register. They were wearing big jackets that covered most of their faces, but the couple managed to point out that one of the men were bigger and one of the men was more skinnier and more gaunt. They couldn't get a good look of the two men, but they felt like they had to. They had a feeling inside that they just had to be aware of what was going on around them. Have you ever been in a situation or in a place where you feel like you have to get a good look of the people and your surroundings? You have to take a mental note of what's going on in case something was to happen. I know I've been in that situation when somebody is giving off a bad vibe or somebody is doing something wrong or what I think is wrong, so I take in everything just in case I need to answer them questions. I don't know if that's just me. Let me know if that's something you do as well down below. The couple left the shop at 10:47 PM as the shop was due to close at 11 PM. The couple had noticed that the girls had already started to clean up and were getting ready to close up the shop. They were wiping down tables and putting chairs on top and just doing all the normal things that they would do on an evening shift. It was later discovered that the only chairs left around tables were the two where the young men had been sat. The girls' parents didn't suspect a thing when it was getting a little bit later and they weren't home. The shop shut at 11 and the parents understood that sometimes it takes a little bit longer or things arise and they can't quite get everything finished up on time. They thought it was kind of ordinary for the girls to sometimes take longer to get home. It had been confirmed by police that $540 had been stolen and possibly robbery was the motive. It was also determined that the fire started at around 11:42 PM and the bodies were used to alert this fire. Firefighters were lucky to diminish this fire as quickly as they did. The fire was so hot that the bodies had started to melt. If the patrolling police officer hadn't noticed as quickly and fire crews didn't get there as quickly as they did, The fire could have quickly gotten out of hand and damaged the businesses that surrounded it. Unfortunately, the fire and the water either damaged or contaminated most of the evidence, so it made it really hard for police to find any DNA, any information about the killers, so they had a really hard time to try and figure out who did this to the victims. The only evidence investigators had discovered was an unknown male's DNA. But unfortunately they were never able to match this to anybody. Police do believe that this attack was targeted and the attackers had thought out the whole process very well. The killers were very aware that the fire and the water would damage any evidence. They also used ingredients like raspberry sauce around the bodies to contaminate any blood evidence, and they found these ingredients around the yogurt shop, so they knew that they were there. So they really did think through this whole process very well. Police have spent years trying to search for the killers. They have spoken to witnesses, they've raised rewards, and investigators have been inundated with tips. But unfortunately, none of these tips were helpful to this case. The victims themselves were not hiding anything. None of them had any possible enemies. Each one of them had promising futures ahead. Jennifer's boyfriend was questioned after his DNA was found in the yogurt shop, but it was determined that him and Jennifer often hooked up in there and had sex in the back room, so this would explain his DNA being in the shop. Over 50 people, including jailed serial killers, have confessed to the murders, including 2 Mexican nationals, but each one has been ruled as false. In October 1999, 4 suspects were arrested in connection to these murders. It was discussed at trial that the DNA found at the scene was run by 70 men, including the 4 that were on trial that day, but none of them matched this DNA. The charges were dropped and the men were released because there wasn't enough substantial evidence to tie them 4 men to these murders. Within the Austin Police Department, a few issues started to arise while this case was being investigated. One officer had been arrested, charged and jailed with coercing a confession that sent an innocent man to jail. This caused tension because many people believed that this case, including many others, were not being dealt with correctly. The trial against this policeman went on for a number of years and there was a lot more information in regards to the Austin Police Department that came out. But that is a case for another day. It doesn't highly impact the case that we are talking about today. Over the past couple of years, there hasn't been any new evidence, any new suspects or arrests within this case. The yogurt shop murders case is currently being reviewed by Austin's Cold Case Unit, and they are hoping to find a match to the small bit of DNA that they have. Despite all the witnesses, there is very little information and evidence surrounding that night. It was a wake-up call for Austin, and everybody within that city felt like they were grieving for a loved one. 4 beautiful teenagers with their lives ahead of them were selfishly killed by killers, because police do believe that there is more than one person involved. More than one person is responsible for the young girls' deaths, and the culprits deserve to be caught and sent to jail. Their family deserves all the justice in the world. Everybody in the area around Austin, everybody who knew the girls, were highly affected by this case. From what I have seen, if you was to ask anybody who is older and in the Austin area, they would tell you about this and how they felt. It really affected people, including the police officers who saw the bodies that night. They have openly said that it affected them forever. They are still feeling the effects of it today, and to think the people who caused all that distress, not only killed people but caused distress, are still out there running around, obviously older now, and living their own lives. As always, I will leave information down below, so if you know anything or any information at all, no matter how little, could help a case like this one. So I'll leave the contact details down below so you can contact the relevant agencies and tell them the information that you know. I really hope that I have done this case justice. It took me a long time to research it because there is a lot of information surrounding the case, but there isn't, if you understand what I mean. There was a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of conspiracies, and I obviously wanted to stick to the facts and lay it all down for you. So I really hope you managed to stick along till the end. If you did, and if you've been here for a while on this channel, you know that we comment a word in the comment box at the end of each video, and today's word is flower. So if you've managed to stick around to the end, please comment flower down below. That is it for this week's true crime video. I will see you at the weekend for my story time Saturday, and next week if you're sticking around for the true crime videos. If you did enjoy, please give this video a massive thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to jump over to Instagram and follow me there. And I shall see you in my next video. Bye.